Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pysz. We're celebrating our 20th year on the air here on WQLN FM 91.3. We'll be starting our 21st year in July. We're on about a dozen podcast venues, but particularly WQLN.org has all these recordings live streamed the first Sunday of the month at 4 on WQLN FM 91.3 and on NPR One. I am so thrilled today to have a very special guest, Kojancie. And Rue, I'm so thrilled to have you here as the CEO of the Erie Zoo. How long have you been there in that position now?
So I've been here at the zoo for 25 years now, and I've been in the position of president and CEO officially for just over a year.
Well, congratulations. And it's great to see someone that knows all the ins and outs and all the creatures, so to speak, as well as you do. And Scott Mitchell still hangs around. Is that true?
That's correct. So Scott has transitioned into our director of development. So, he's responsible along with me about going out and fundraising and seeking financial support.
Well, this is an exciting thing because as I travel around the country, you do not see as many zoos as nice as the Erie Zoo, if you see a zoo at all in a town the size of Erie, Pennsylvania. How old is the Erie Zoo?
So the Erie Zoo, we are just celebrating our 100th anniversary this year. We turned 100 in 2024, and we're having so much fun celebrating that we're celebrating through this season as well. So the zoo was formed in 1924. And it was actually known as the Glenwood Park Zoo back then. Mm-hmm. And it was founded by the Erie Public Parks Association. So our story actually starts even before that, back in about 1890, 1895, where the Erie Public Parks Association was formed and secured about 105 acres of land where the zoo resides currently on 15 acres of that. So we've got a very long history, and it's been a lot of fun this past year, really delving into our archives and reliving some of those moments in our past that are just so key for us and such great memories to celebrate.
Well, running a zoo from 20 years ago, as you remember, and running a zoo today is a totally different business venture. How are things different in your opinion?
So when I first started, I will say over time when I first started, there was definitely a very heavy focus on animal well-being. But over these last 20 years, that has really grown into something truly fantastic, where animals are encouraged to have choice and control over their environments. So if you remember exhibits back maybe 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago, those exhibits look a lot different back then than they do now. And as zoos modernize and as zoos change, you see larger, more complex exhibits. And these exhibits are designed with the animal's natural history in mind. So what researchers are learning in the field about different species, zoos are gathering that information, working together, and driving forward higher levels of animal care, animal well-being, and exhibit design. So as we move forward here, especially at the zoo, our guests may have seen that over the years our exhibits have grown. They're more complex. We have different animal social structures that you'll see in the different exhibits. So zoos really have transitioned into providing excellent care for the animals. And I would say, too, zoos have also changed where a long time ago, I think people remember when zoos would secure animals from the wild. Now there has been this pivot where not only does that not occur, zoos have manage breeding programs among zoos to foster healthy genetics among species, to foster healthy populations, And then also, zoos are working with other organizations to release animals into the wild. So the Andean Condor or the California Condor Project is a great example of that, as is the black-footed ferret reintroduction project.
Don't you wish you had another 15 acres?
Wouldn't that be nice?
And I guess what I'm saying is if someone goes to the Erie Zoo, and if folks come from out of town and folks that are listening from farther away, the zoo has done a great job in managing the space, managing how the visitors interact with just the environment of the zoo. I feel you're sort of on a more hilly terrain. That's an advantage for you, do you think?
I think so, yes. So we hear a lot that, we are a zoo on the smaller side. We operate on 15 acres, and about 3 of those acres are actually our Safari Land exhibit, where our train takes our guests out to Safari Land, and they actually get to immerse themselves in our Safari Land exhibit. So we really operate exhibit-wise on about 10 acres. And what we hear a lot is that people that may have never been here before or travel to other zoos love the terrain of our zoo and love how they just need to walk a little bit and they'll see something new. It's not like they need to walk through a long pathway to see something. They get to walk and see something new right around the corner. And we have a fantastic landscaping and horticulture team here that makes the zoo feel a little bit bigger than it really is through creating interesting walkways and different landscape dynamics. And so we really are, nestled in this great area, and we're able to do a lot with the space that we have.
Now, with all that said, how do you manage what you have? Do you have to rebuild exhibits? You've done a lot of work. It's got to be an immense cost just to upgrade the environment. Let's talk about budget. How does that happen? Who supports the zoo? And how are you able, for example, to create a new animal environment? How does that all go relative to the numbers?
Sure. So the very reputable zoos out there, you will see that just like with us, zoos are in one way, shape, or form under construction in an area at any given time. So exhibits, we usually, zoos across the country, you usually look at about a 30-year life on an exhibit before you really start thinking about modernizing the exhibit, looking at new maybe regulations that are out there about space requirements for maybe new animals that you would like to bring in. So zoos typically tend to be under construction at any given time. And yes, we are no different. When we work to start planning for a new exhibit, we generate 95% of our own income. 5% of that comes from governmental support. So we do a lot of fundraising, and we do, we seek different grant opportunities, and so it really comes down to that fundraising component. Just recently, about 2 years ago, we upgraded and completely remodeled what used to be our giraffe habitat into a very fun and engaging primate habitat with 3 different species of monkeys. And we are so grateful for donations that came in for that project. Just last year, we completed our new fully expanded otter habitat, our North American otter exhibit. And the otters are so fun and so engaging to watch that this exhibit has just been a great exhibit for us over the years. But with new regulations and requirements to house otters, we took a look at our exhibit and, determined that this was the next one that we wanted to do. It's 3 times the size of the previous exhibit that was built in the 80s. And again, fun, engaging. The otters love it. The animal care team loves it, and our guests love it. So it's just a win across all different levels. And thinking about new projects coming forward, we are working right now to fundraise for our new veterinary center. And we were able to secure $5 million in RACP funding. That's a state grant. We were able to secure $5 million there, which means that we've secured 50% of the funding for the new vet center. So it really is all about community support, state and local support, and fundraising to drive it forward.
I'm glad you brought up the vet center. I think that was a critical issue for you because there are criteria to meet certain levels of zoo, whatever the word would be, scaling levels of zoos. You need to have some kind of vet facility in order to maintain a certain, how would you say, degree, a degree in zoo. What would that title be? Something where you're qualified to be named as a certain level of zoo.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we are seeking right now is accreditation by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. They are the leading zoo accrediting body in North America. And so we are working very hard to gain accreditation. And one of the things we focused on is constructing a veterinary center where all of our veterinary components are gathered under one roof. So over the years, we've met these standards by tucking the different facilities that we need throughout our campus. And so this would mean bringing all of those facilities under one roof to further support our veterinary team. We maintain a full-time veterinarian as well as 2 full-time veterinary technicians and a part-time veterinary technician. So what this project would do would be to support our veterinary team in further enhancing the level of veterinary care that we're able to provide to our animals. That would be increased imaging capabilities, a state-of-the-art treatment space. And as we do this, we're always keeping the guests in mind as well. And what a modern zoo is doing, and exactly what we want to be doing, is to educate every single opportunity that we have about the excellent care that we provide the animals and how amazing these animals are. So what we are doing is creating opportunities for our guests to be able to see into the treatment area. So if our veterinarian is doing a procedure, we will actually have a window where guests will be able to come right up to the window and watch our veterinary and animal care teams, do health checkups and treatments on some of our amazing animals. So along with that, we also looked at how we can support the community with this project. And we took a very hard look at the need within the community for high-level imaging capabilities. Right now, if someone has a dog or a cat that needs to have high-level imaging done, they need to travel to Akron, to Pittsburgh to have that work done. So with our veterinary center, we're developing a community-facing component of this where local veterinarians would be able to schedule time to use our CT unit. So not only would it provide a great resource for the community, it would keep those dollars within the community. Guests wouldn't have to, or the community wouldn't have to travel out of town and worry about gas and worry about a hotel stay. All of that can be done right here at home. So we're really excited about that component of this project too.
That's fantastic. So zoos are no longer just a place to visit animals. They are now an educational center. You're basically a medical center. Plus, you're integrating education with what you're doing to help the animals. Did you see this coming years ago? Was this, maybe as you look back 10 years ago, was this, do you think, on the agenda back then?
I think it was. Looking long term, I do. I think it was. For zoos across the country, conservation and education is the root of the mission of a zoo. Not only creating a wonderful, engaging guest experience, but furthering conservation efforts for those critical animals, those critical species that are endangered in the wild. I can say that So throughout my years here at the zoo, I was an animal keeper for a very long time. And one of the amazing things about zoos is that you can see those moments where you've touched the heart and it teaches the mind. We call those spark moments here. And through the different behind the scenes tours that we do here, from those moments where a little one goes right up to the glass and is nose to nose with a lion, you can see those moments happen on a daily basis. And that is just one of the many reasons why we do what we do and why zoos are just amazing places to be.
The schools must love you, and I'm sure you integrate with them often. Are there programs where you team up together, or do the schools just schedule visits? How does that work?
So with our educational components, we do have a lot of school groups that come and visit the zoo. I believe last year we welcomed 13,000 school children through groups and through classes. We also have our outreach programs that go out into the community, to the libraries, to community centers, to different assisted living facilities and places like that, so that if people aren't able to come to the zoo, we go to them because we know how meaningful and important it is to have everyone be able to experience the wonders of the natural world. So not only do we have a fantastic education department here at the zoo, everyone here holds education near and dear to their hearts, from our animal care staff doing keeper talks and keeper chats and training demonstrations at our different animal exhibits, to our horticulture team, really engaging with families and little ones, talking about some of the really interesting and endangered plants that we have here at the zoo. So every chance we get, we are always working to make that connection with people that come through and really share our passion.
I mistakenly thought that after 100 years, you'd have some large endowments that would fund maybe even 50 or more % of the operation of the zoo. And you mentioned that you go year to year, month to month on fundraising. That's got to be the most difficult way to maintain such a complex organization. Do you see that changing, or boy, you just don't know, right? You're going hand to mouth with fundraising events. That has to be pretty difficult.
So over the years, we've learned how to do a lot with a little. But I will say, as we look to the future, we absolutely want to position ourselves for a very stable and thriving future. When we look at the amount of revenue that we self-generate, that is practically unheard of throughout other reputable zoos. So again, we generate 95% of our own funding through philanthropic support, through admission, through taking a train or carousel ride, purchasing something at the concession stand, stopping in the gift shop. What we have seen, and we've done research on this, is that regional peer zoos get a substantial amount of government support. So, for example, Pittsburgh Zoo receives 20% of their operating revenue from governmental support. The aviary in Pittsburgh receives about 25%. We receive, if you take a look at that, I mean, we are receiving 5%. So we are making strides to secure that sustainable operational funding that we want to have in place, so as to position ourselves to really launch into a very successful future.
To show people how well you do, I believe you have 27 or so new animals at the Erie Zoo. That's an incredible accomplishment. Is that over a short period of time, or say in the last few years? How did that all come to be?
So that was in over the last few years. And what we do is we work with other zoos accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. That is, they're known as like AZA is the name of the association. And so we work with those other zoos because we want to make sure that the animals that we bring to the zoo are animals that have a story to tell. The animals that you'll find in zoos are animals that represent endangered animals in the wild. So we want to make sure that we're telling those stories. We also want to be a part of managed breeding populations to help bolster those numbers. It's really interesting that there are animals within zoos now that are completely extinct in the wild. And the only way that those species survive is through zoos. And we actually have a species. It is our paired David deer. And those deer are extinct in the wild. They are only surviving in zoos and sanctuary settings. So we focus on those types of stories and the conservation behind, why zoos are important.
I see that you have or did have a panda. That had to have been a complex thing to arrange. I'm sure that was a big success for you.
So we love our red pandas here at the zoo.
Yeah.
And we've had great success with breeding red pandas. And they are such an interesting species. And one of the exhibits that we're updating that will be complete this year is our red panda habitat. So red pandas are arboreal. They love living in trees. So our exhibit is going to be higher than the one we had before, more branching, more interactive space for our guests, because that's very important to us to create those spaces where the animals will continue to thrive, and then also create these moments where our guests can get up close and personal and interact with our animals.
What do people say about the zoo, or what kind of suggestions do they offer you?
They would love to see the zoo expand. And we are a bit landlocked right now, but we are working on that. And they would love to see the zoo grow, expand, and secure that funding that we need to really launch the zoo into a regional destination. So I would say those would be the biggest things.
Well, more than regional, if you have some animal that's very, very interesting, I have to believe that folks would come from far away to see. Oh, it's like when you go up to the Toronto Zoo. I remember when they first built that. Hundreds and hundreds of acres, and you got to ride a train to see everything. And it was fascinating to see the elephants and the rhinos in a very natural habitat. But then from what I hear, zoos like the Erie Zoo are more appealing. You do all the correct things environmentally for the animals. But on the other hand, as you mentioned, it's a nice visit. It's a great place to visit. What are your summer hours?
That's right.
Yeah. What are your summer hours? What's it like for the summer here?
So summertime, we are open 10 to 5. In July, we have our Wild Wednesdays. So every Wednesday in July, we are open until 8 p.m. To encourage, everyone to get out in those evening hours after work, come and experience the zoo and just enjoy like a beautiful setting. And then we just this past year over the winter, we actually had winter hours. So those have wrapped up. Those are select weekends throughout each month in the winter. Those have wrapped up, and now we're moving into our summer hours.
I wanted to compliment you because I belong to a club, and we had the opportunity to have lunch at the zoo. And we had about 50, 60 people all enjoying the picnic area and then walking around the zoo. So you're open to having folks come as a group to visit you?
Absolutely. So, and we encourage people to reach out if they'd like to host a company picnic or a reunion, or even we've had weddings. And then something that's new. Yes. And then something that's new is the promposals, where we have actually hosted promposals where somebody will come and ask somebody else to prom. It's really adorable and a lot of fun, and another great way to make a memory. So we have corporate events that occur here, and those take place either during the day or the zoo can be rented in the evening. So there's lots of opportunities for anyone who might be interested in having that unique experience to give us a call, and we'd love to talk to them about it.
I'm going to throw one at you. One of the things you have, and I hope it's still there, is that I call it the Lionel train exhibit, the model train exhibit for folks, and there are a lot of folks who love model trains. That is just an excellent exhibit. That's still there, I hope?
It is still there, and we've actually updated it a bit. So in the front of that, and in front of our miniature train garden, you'll see that we have display cases now. So you can take a look at some of those, the trains that were on the tracks before that we have right up close. So especially the little ones can get right up close and see those.
Well, it's a nice addition. I had not seen that anywhere else relative to a park or a zoo. So a little value added for folks who like to come and visit you. So could you repeat your hours one more time so folks can schedule something to come and visit you?
Absolutely. So we are open 7 days a week. We are open 10 to 5, and we are open until 8 p.m. on the Wednesdays in July for our Wild Wednesdays.
Can't beat it. Rue, Kojancie, you are fabulous, and it's wonderful to see someone who's been there 20 years now at the helm of a wonderful organization. We wish you the best. We hope maybe during the summer I can come and bother you and you can give us a verbal tour of some of the more exotic animals or other animals that you think are important to the Erie Zoo. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and I would love to have you here whenever you'd like to stop by.
Going once? Going twice? It's the WQLN Great TV Auction. Get ready for 4 days of action, May 15th through the 18th, live on WQLN PBS and online at WQLN.org/auction. Bid on everything from restaurant certificates, limo rides, vacations, local wines, car care supplies, and so much more. New items every night and something for just about everybody. Mark your calendar, May 15th through the 18th, only on WQLN PBS.
Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pysz. We're celebrating our, wow, it's hard to believe, over 20 years on the air here, WQLN FM 91.3. We're on about a dozen or more podcast venues and several more every month as it turns up. We are also on NPR One, and we certainly invite you to visit WQLN.org to listen to some of the old programs. You may find some guests that you will find interesting and have educated as well here on public broadcasting in Northwest Pennsylvania. I have a very, very special guest today, brand new to his job, Gregory Hall, who is now the Chief Executive Officer of the Second Harvest Food Bank. Welcome to the program. I'm so thrilled to have you on the air here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Tom. I'm also thrilled to be able to be here with you.
Well, you have a lot of work to do. You're filling the shoes of a most amazing person, Karen Sedgey. Wow, she's been there, it's got to be over 30 years. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think it's close to 35 at this point. She truly was an institution here.
What a devoted, fundraising, community-minded person. And I'm sure you're well prepared to move into the position. Can you tell us a little bit where you came from? What jobs did you have, say, prior in the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally I'm from Zelienople, Pennsylvania, in Butler County, just north of Pittsburgh. My wife and I and family have been in Erie now close to 20 years at this point. I have a background in both for-profit, nonprofit. Most recently, I was at Shriners Hospitals for Children as their Director of Business Development for about 7 years, and at Sarah Reed Children's Center for about 3 years as their Chief Operating Officer. I will tell you, I actually did a stint back in for-profit between Shriners and Sarah Reed. I went back to for-profit for about a year, and that was honestly difficult for me. I've always been mission-driven, and I would wake up every morning and I said, what am I actually doing, right? It gave me an opportunity to kind of reevaluate what is important to me, what's important to the community, and kind of jumped right back into children's healthcare there. And then having the opportunity to, join an organization like Second Harvest that has such an impact on the community, not just in Erie County, but across 11 counties in Northwest PA, I had to jump at the opportunity to be able to lead such a wonderful organization with such great people. That to kind of take a mission and vision and have that kind of impact really is what attracted me to the position.
I think people would be happy to learn that you went to Gannon.
I did. That's right. So, so I went to Gannon for 4 years, and then after that, I actually went back towards the Pittsburgh region. Then graduated from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, and honestly, it was. I feel like fate or a roll of the dice that we ended up back in Erie. My wife got a job with Penn State Barron after finishing up at the University of Pittsburgh as well. And I said to her, I guess we're going back to Erie. So we've been here actually longer than 20 years, I guess, is the truth of it.
Now, you were involved with Sarah Reed Children's Center, another valuable organization in the community.
Yeah, they're a wonderful organization. Like I said, I was there for about 3 years as their chief operating officer. They are another fantastic organization. Those that aren't familiar with it, they do mental behavioral health for children, the whole gamut, everything from residential treatment. Those are children that live, with Sarah Reed 24/7, to partial hospitalization, to outpatient, to school-based programs. They also are a wonderful organization that has such an impact on the community. And I would say having those sorts of experiences that I've had with different nonprofits, different for-profits, it's kind of shaped my vision about who we as Second Harvest can be, who we as the nonprofit community can be. Seeing that the folks that in particular maybe struggle with food insecurity, they also struggle with other needs, housing insecurity, mental behavioral health, like at Sarah Reed, domestic violence issues, those sorts of things. So to me, can we as Second Harvest maybe be kind of a central point for that? Maybe create centers or central areas where folks can come for one place to get multiple services or get connected with multiple services. Because honestly, at the end of the day, I think it's an unfair ask when you maybe talk to a single parent that's struggling, right, and say, okay, we can help you with all of these things, but you need to go here to get food. You need to go here for housing security. You need to go here for your children's mental behavioral health. You have to go here for your health care. I think that's an unfair ask to say to someone that's maybe even struggling with transportation, that you need to be able to do all these things. Yeah. Versus can we maybe come together as a community, find central hubs of service, and I think food can be that key centerpiece.
It is stressful, and I think there's a lack of awareness, so to speak, of how much of a food desert we have here. Let me rephrase that more succinctly. I'm really surprised that people are not able to get something that you and I just run down to the grocery store and just take for granted. Am I barking up the right tree here?
Yeah, I think you are. I think it is twofold, right? You mentioned the food deserts. So there are obviously food deserts within the city that we know about. There are also, I would call, food deserts across the county and across all 11 counties. And kind of what I mean by that is how you can easily get access to food. So that's the first issue, right? When you look at, say, even a rural community that maybe now the only place that's selling groceries is like a Dollar General or Walmart, which requires you to get that transportation to get out there, right? And you have the same thing within the city, maybe difficulty with bus lines. You look at maybe an area of the city where the only food in the area is going to be like a country fair or something like that. Mm-hmm. So the access is the first struggle. I think the second struggle is we've all seen it, even those of us that you mentioned can easily get access to groceries and that sort of stuff, is the increased prices that we've seen over the last, it's got to be 5 years at this point. Mm-hmm. I think I saw a study the other day where over the last 5 years, grocery prices have increased by 23%. So even those of us that have access to the foods, we've seen the prices. So I think it's twofold, right? The access to those types of foods, and then when they can get access, they're just priced out of even nutritious foods like milk, eggs, produce, that sort of thing. So it's a real issue, and it's a twofold issue. And I think it would be startling to find that not only just in the 11 counties we serve, but Erie County, 1 in 7 folks are food insecure, and 1 in 5 children. So it's a real issue that impacts our community.
Help me with the logistics. How does this work? You have a huge facility. How do you get food? How do you get food to folks that need it? How do people learn what they can get in time of need? How do they manage this in their lives?
Yeah, big question. So yes, you are correct. We have I would say a very large warehouse. It's about 60,000 square feet, both dry. We have dry storage, cooler storage, freezer storage. And so the basic model is we work with all sorts of partners to acquire food, right? So we have what we call food donors, and that's kind of twofold. We have some very large donors like Walmart, Giant Eagle, Wegmans that donate large amounts of food to us. So you can imagine this is coming on trucks and pallets, and we're using forklifts to take those off, put those into our warehouse. The other types of food donors we see are folks that host food drives for us. So that's one source of food for us. The other is we actually do a lot of food purchasing. So as folks donate to us, we will actually purchase food and put it in our warehouse and on inventory. Other types of programs that we do, we obviously get state, federal funding. There are different programs that are available there. So we really get food from a kind of a whole host of different, sources. So now once we have those foods in warehouse, there are several different ways that we can get those to the folks in need that actually, that need them on the front line. So we have 384 partner agencies. So these are folks like food pantries, faith-based pantries, soup kitchens. Regionally, you can think right off the top of your head, folks like Emmaus and Erie City Mission. And so then they can order that food from us on inventory. And then daily we are out with our trucks delivering that food directly then to those pantries, to those types of organizations who are serving our neighbors in need kind of right on the front line. We also do some of our own food distribution. So we have programs like we call Produce Express, where we get fresh produce, and you have to move that a little quicker than some of the dry foods that I'm talking about. So we will load up one of our trucks, go to areas that we know that traditional food pantries may not be available. We'll unload there with volunteers and serve about 200 struggling families at a time, kind of a drive-through model. Where we can provide them probably around 25 to 50 pounds per time of nutritious food. We do military shares. They're very similar to that, where we work with veterans. You maybe have a family member that's actively deployed and you might be struggling a bit. We do that. We have backpack programs where we fill bags for children that are struggling. We partner with school districts, and they can take those bags home over the weekends, over breaks, where we know, unfortunately, many of these children are only getting fed at school. And so we have school pantry programs, senior box programs, all of those sorts of things. So we have kind of a diverse model of how we get food to our community members and our neighbors that are in need.
Greg, this has been an amazing education for me. I think people think it's a drive up or walk into a store-like environment and pick things out. But you're more dedicated. You have actually packaging, you have trucks, you have vehicles, you have commercial organizations that help you. This is a huge logistics model. How do you manage it? What's your staff like?
Yeah, so we have at this point, I think, about 42 staff members. We run, I think logistical operation is the best way to think about it. And we have folks that are working in warehousing, truck driving. We have then on the other side of, I call it the other side of the house, folks that work with our agencies to ensure that they're getting what they need. We have food sourcers, right? So those folks are, when I mentioned, for example, that we purchase a lot of food, whether that's through donations or self-funding that we do, we have food sourcers, and they work to find the best price per pound on food that they can, and then purchase directly from wholesalers, or they work with our partner organizations like Feeding America, Feeding Pennsylvania, to get food that way. They also do food rescue, which I'm sure folks have heard about, but a lot of that is us trying to rescue food that would be otherwise thrown out. So we will work with, say, a couple partners. Like I've been on what we call our bread runs, where we have one of our truck drivers will meet up with some of our partners, pick up food that would otherwise be thrown out, and then directly deliver it to one of our partners. So, for example, we might do in the morning, we will go to a Sam's Club, Giant Eagle, Wegmans, and this could be, maybe bread that is, they're just going to toss, but it is perfectly still usable. We will collect those donations that day and then take them again to one of our partners, like I mentioned, a City Mission, Emmaus, those sorts of things. So, excuse me, it really is a large logistical operation that we run here with the ultimate goal of getting food to our neighbors in need.
So how many vehicles do you operate?
Yeah, we have a very large fleet. I believe at this point, and we're constantly adding. I know we have two new semi-trailers coming. So I think at this point we've got about 5 semis, about 5 box trucks, a whole host of vans as well, and trailers. So we operate a whole fleet of vehicles. And we try best when we look at those logistics. You mentioned the logistics, trying to plan out if we're going to, say Warren County, Forest County, how we load those trucks and get them to our partners in distribution. So it's a rather large fleet operation as well.
This is impressive. I think people thought this was a walk-up operation, but you actually are logically planning how to put food where it will best serve the community. What is our need in Northwest Pennsylvania? What percentage of people take advantage of this wonderful service?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I'm glad you brought up the need. So as I mentioned earlier, there is about 100,000 individuals in Northwest PA that we have identified that are food insecure. And when we use that term, that basically means they don't know where their next meal is coming from. So we've identified those folks. You mentioned the need. We have seen the last 2 years or so, the amount of folks that are using our service increase by close to 40%. So we've seen that need increase. And I think it goes back to what I talked about a little bit earlier, where, those two issues, the transportation, the access to food, and then the rising prices we have seen.
You scared me a little bit because my mind is telling me that the population of the city of Erie may have fallen below 100,000, and I may be wrong, but the number is close to 100,000. And you're saying you're servicing 100,000 people out of a population metro maybe of 270, 280,000 people. That means just about everybody you walk by someplace has some food need, or that's what I'm starting to perceive. Is this true?
Yeah, I mean, it is, you know what it is? I think, too, a lot of folks just think that, there's only a specific subset of folks that end up, food insecure, right? When you think about folks that are maybe struggling financially. But what we also do is we help supplement folks who maybe are in a crisis situation. Maybe you have a family that becomes unemployed or, they lose their job and all of a sudden they don't even know how they're going to feed their children. So the idea is that we're there to help supplement that in those times of need when they need to just even provide basic food for their family while they, look for the next job or the next opportunity that they have. So I think that's why you see those numbers, that we're helping to supplement our neighbors even in those types of situations. And so then just to even break that number down, that we look at a monthly number. So I would say average month unique households we service around 16,000. Unique individuals, about 41,000. And so when I say unique, that is they might come, to a distribution or a pantry 3 or 4 times, but that is we count those as the unique first time they came. So it's about 41, sometimes 50,000 a month that we're seeing. And that's actually across all of our 11 county service area.
Okay, so this is not just Erie, Pennsylvania, it's Northwest Pennsylvania and all the regions you serve. Are we typical in the United States? Is this a national problem?
It is. It definitely is. And there are pockets, there are definitely pockets. I would say we're probably, we're not, I hate to say the word, kind of on the worst end of it, but we definitely have higher needs than maybe other areas of the country. But yeah, nationwide, it's a similar trend. I was just at a Feeding America conference, meeting with other food banks across the nation, and we are definitely seeing these sorts of trends, increased need for services, and those things, because I think a lot of communities are struggling with the same sort of thing, access and pricing.
You've worked intimately with children, Shriners Hospitals for Children, the one in Erie, and Sarah Reed Children's Center. How is this food, I keep calling it a food desert. That really refers to a retail model. I'm thinking more, how does this affect our community? This has to be stressful for the schools as well. Do you get involved with schools, or are they having to buy things direct from wholesalers?
That is a great question, and that is honestly one of the things that originally attracted me to this role. I mean, as much as I talk about wanting to have an impact on the community and the people here, for me, a lot of it starts with children. And yes, we do work closely with schools. We have a couple different school programs that we do. One is our school backpack program. And the way that works is, when I talked about we receive these, massive donations of food, or we purchase food, and then what we do is we have volunteers that help pack these, what we call backpacks. They're bags of food. And the idea is we know that many of the children in our region, the only, guaranteed meal that they're getting is at school, breakfast, lunch. And we work to try to make up some of that gap. And so the idea of this program is that on Fridays, the schools identify children that are in need. We deliver those backpacks. The children get to take them home to help get them through the weekend. We work with them as well for, breaks. Like I know we have Easter and spring breaks coming up right now. Same sort of concept. We also have what we call a school pantry program. And so what that is, it's kind of like creating a bit of a, I would call it a shopping experience for our older children so that they can go in maybe at high school, and instead of us giving them food directly, they get the opportunity, then they get a bag and kind of pick out what they want for the weekends. We also work with families to get access to those. So we do work closely with the schools, and honestly, the impact is, when you think about it, how can a child succeed at school when they are hungry all the time? When you can't even get the basic, that basic need for food fulfilled. I think it's unfair to ask our children to be able to learn, pass tests, all of those sort of things when they're coming to school hungry and not knowing where that next meal is going to come from. So that is definitely a program and service that is near and dear to my heart. And we are, we are looking for ways to expand those type of services with schools, with children's organizations. And that's definitely a vision I have coming into this position. How do we maybe collaborate with other organizations that are working with children? Again, maybe Sarah Reed, maybe somebody like the United Way, as we know they do the community schools programs. How can we collaborate better with those organizations? Because we are serving the same children, maybe making it more efficient or finding those gaps in need for them. But yeah, it does definitely impact our children, I would say, maybe in the strongest way, because then they can't even have the opportunity to learn when they're worried about where their next meal is coming from.
We're talking to Gregory D. Hall, who is at the Second Harvest Food Bank of Northwest Pennsylvania, the new CEO. And how long have you been there now? A few months only?
Yeah, it's been about 2 months at this point. It's been, sorry, it sounds like you were going to have a follow-up there.
No, I was startled, not startled, I was impressed, actually, to thank you for having such a wonderful perspective of your job already in an effective manner. It just seems like you've jumped into the position, really having a good handle of what you need to do, what you are doing. And now, do you see this model? It's a business model. You're working to get food to the folks that need it. Do you see this model changing somehow in the future? Do you see things getting better? Why are there all these hungry people? I'm startled. This is the United States of America. Maybe my perspective is a little lean, and I'm going to guess other people may not be aware of how lean food is in our community.
Yeah, I think, a couple things. You mentioned the perspective. I think why I have such a broad perspective of what the issues are and how we potentially solve them kind of goes back again to my background of having both worked in for-profit in Erie, served in several different roles in nonprofit. I've also served on several nonprofit boards. I believe I have the right perspective of how all of these systems interplay and how we as organizations can come together to solve them. So when, you kind of laugh a little bit, I've been here 2 months, but I can already see kind of the big picture about everything we're doing here. Because to me, it's just another service model, right? Instead of delivery of mental behavioral health at my role in Sarah Reed, it's delivery of food, right? And it's a similar style concept. I mean, obviously the logistics and how that works and the service provided are a little different, but at the same time, it's the same sorts of issues. And so I think that's kind of where that perspective comes from. So you mentioned, why maybe the need is so great or greater than folks think.
Yes.
Again, I know we talked a little bit about it, but it really is. We've seen the access become more centralized, right? When, 10, 20, 30 years ago, there was a grocery store on every little corner, and now a lot of that has been consolidated, right? Like I mentioned, maybe in one of the a rural county, the only place to get groceries is a Dollar General or a Walmart. It's hard. It's hard to find the transportation. It's hard to get folks to where they need to be. And then again, as the prices we've seen have increased, that is driving, I think, those are the two big drivers, I think, that are causing the issues that we're seeing that are so widespread. I know you also asked about the future model, right, and where we see this going. For me, I see a lot more collaboration on the horizon where we as individuals, whether it's, the Second Harvest Food Bank or Sarah Reed or Shriners, even our bigger partners like a Erie Insurance or a UPMC. I think in the future, and we're already starting to see it, how do we collaborate together to solve these community issues, right? So obviously, if children are not being fed and they're struggling with school, that's going to impact the next generation of workforce, which is going to impact places like Erie Insurance, right? And so how do we all maybe come together and solve this and develop, like I mentioned, these community centers or those sorts of things? So I see a lot more collaboration moving forward for us to come together and say it's more than just food insecurity. It's more than just access to mental health. It's more than just access to dental care, right? But I definitely see us moving together into the future in a more collaborative approach.
Thank you for that good answer. As you move forward, is the model going to change? Is it pretty much well designed right now? Is this the way your model will be, say, in the next 5 years or so?
That's a great question. I think the foundations of the model are working. We've seen food banking across not just here, but across the country has a very similar model where we have the central, food banker that is able to leverage our size to make the, purchases, to leverage large partners to get donors, food donors, that sort of thing, and then, distribute it down to the communities, those faith-based organizations, those pantries who can one-on-one have those relationships and get the food there. So I think structurally the base makes a lot of sense. Where I see us potentially shifting over the next 5-10 years is a lot of us, I think, will start to get more into the distribution game. Like I mentioned, we already do a little bit of that ourselves with our Produce Expresses, our military shares, the backpack programs that I mentioned. I think we potentially will do more of that, where we will identify areas where there's need for a pantry, but there's not really an organization or people that are in that area that have the ability to run, an organization like that. I think a lot of us, again, due to our position in the community, our sizes, we can leverage partnerships like I talked about with maybe an Erie Insurance or UPMC or Allegheny Health Net, where an organization like Second Harvest can approach them and say, all right, how do we partner together to build, a distribution program that, again, touches on these areas beyond just food, beyond just healthcare access. And I think we're positioned in a way that we can make those things happen. So I could see us shifting over the next 5 to 10 years to start to do more of that individual distribution model. But again, in a slightly different way than you might see a traditional, food pantry or soup kitchen, where we can maybe create, community partnerships to help solve the bigger issues.
You framed that perfectly. Having worked in the corporate world and business world and the nonprofit world for over 40 years now, I see this huge need to elevate everyone to some level of function, giving back to the community. And you can't do that unless you have basic health, good education for children, and definitely children's health and adult health. And it all comes back to, where are we getting our food? What are we eating? And it's so sad that someone needs a package. It's not their fault a good deal of the time, but it's important to have your structure in the community. So with that, I want to say thank you for this interview, and I want to thank you folks, the Food Bank of Northwest Pennsylvania, for doing a great job here.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you as well. Thank you for the opportunity to get together today and have a great conversation, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell our story as well.